You guys see this?
Sweet, we're doing it. Distance formula. Looking at this distance formula notes here, it says it's used to find the distance between 2 points, of course. Now, it talks about this. Parentheses, comma, parentheses, and parentheses, comma, parentheses. These are going to be coordinates or points. And obviously, if we want to find the distance between 2 points, we're going to need to have 2 different points themselves. So for number 1, we're going to skip the formula, we'll come back. Find the distance between the 2 points. I labeled mine A and B. We're going to have to figure out what is the actual mathematical coordinates of these points, A and B. This is something that we did in Algebra 1, literally on the very first day that we ever talked about a graph. How do you find the coordinates? Remember that our coordinates always go x first and then y. And remember that our x values are our horizontal left and right values, and our y values are the vertical up and down values. So if I'm talking about A first, does anybody know what the coordinate for A would be? Or maybe just even the x coordinate? You're correct. It's going to be -5 and 3. I'm pretty impressed with that. It's been a long summer since we did any kind of thing on a graph. I was really impressed that we got our negatives correct. So remember, when you're moving left, you're going towards the negative numbers. So that's why we chose -5. When you're going to the right, it's the positive x values. For the y's, up is positive and down is negative. So since we went left 5 and up 3, it was -5, +3. I might be over-explaining this a little bit to some of us if we're feeling confident. I'm sure there's a couple people who never quite got this all the way grasped down. So if we're going to find B and we're going to go left 2, is that going to be positive or negative? Negative. And if we're going to find the y value and we're going to go down 3, is that going to be positive or negative? Negative. Negative. Nice job. All right. We have to bring 2 coordinates in order to use this formula. Now, if you look at the 3 questions, we've got our coordinates. Number 2 says find the distance given the 2 coordinates. Number 3 says find the distance given the 2 coordinates. So there's not a whole lot of variety to these questions. We just need the formula. Okay? The formula is distance, which is a lowercase d. Geometry loves the very specific uppercase and lowercase. Is going to be the square root, and it's going to be a big square root. Maybe it's starting to come back in your mind a little bit. Okay? We're going to do big parentheses plus a big parentheses, giving ourselves lots of room. And we're going to square those parentheses, both of them. So what we've got so far is the square root of 2 parentheses sets that are added together, and each of them is squared. And we're going to finish off the inside of these parentheses. We're going to need to do x minus x and y minus y. Okay, this is a formula that just looks crazy. Okay, the good news is we have Desmos, and when it comes to using formulas, you just type them in, you get the answer, and you're done. Okay, so what we're going to be testing for these questions is literally, can you write neatly, write down the distance formula, and then type it in a computer, right? I'm not checking if you can move things left and right of an equal sign and keep track. Just, can you get these numbers into this formula and type it in? Now, the only thing I want to say, the only other thing to it, is a lot of times distance formula you'll see written like this. And they have a couple extra numbers here. And I feel like this scares students a lot on the, second week of school. They have x2, x1, y2, y1. And really these numbers aren't that picky. What they're saying is, if you decide that A is going to go first, then A needs to go first in both parentheses sets. So we'll just see that happen, and then we may come back and talk about it. I'm going to write the formula for number 1. D equals. I'm going to go big square root. Honestly, make it big, and then think that's big enough, and then go a little bit more than that. That's always a good idea. And I like to get myself set up with parentheses squared plus parentheses squared. One of the biggest mistakes is always the negatives in the middle. So I like to get myself all the way here, all the way organized until I have everything there except for the x's and the y's. And now it's just time to get those numbers into the formula. Okay? Like I was saying, we need to decide x minus x. Which one you want to put first? You want to put the A number in there first or the B number in there first? Sure, we'll put the A number in there first. So, what is the x of the A coordinate? Negative 5. And so, what goes in this second gap here? It has to be negative 2. It has to be the x value from the other coordinate. Now, the reason I said that the negatives is the most common mistake, if you look right here, we're going to end up with minus, minus. And that's how we're going to have it. That's how we're going to type it in Desmos. That's how it needs to look. There's a negative from the formula, and there's a negative from the value of x. Now we're going to go to the y portion, and all we have to do is get these two numbers in the right order, and the question's over. But they have to be in the right order. Negative 5 came first, so which number has to come first? 3. It has to be 3. Because A was the first number, we have to make sure it's the first number in both sets. What number goes in this last piece here? Negative 3. All right, we got the whole question. There's really not any math that we need to do. We're just throwing stuff in the formula, and now we're just going to throw it in Desmos. So I'm going to Desmos. I made it here. I'm going to type things in carefully. Square root, it's been a while. How do you get a square root in the Desmos? Couple different ways to do it. SQRT, which stands for square root, is going to give you a square root. I like to do parentheses squared, not at sign, plus parentheses squared. That kind of gets me set up. And then the number one thing people mess up is the negatives. So I like to put the negatives in there. Before I get anywhere, I'm already this far, and at this point, it's just, boom, 4 numbers, I'm done. 4 numbers, I'm done. The first number, negative 5. The second number, negative 2. The third number is going to be 3. And the last number is going to be negative 3. I type all those things in, and I get an ugly number, and unfortunately, that is the answer. That's it. Doesn't get any nicer. We're not able to make it a fraction. We're not able to do anything. That's all we get. So let's round it to, how about 1 decimal is good enough. 6.7 equals 6.7. Class is flying by, guys. Lunch is already 30 minutes away. We're doing good. All right, and that's it. Now, we really didn't do very much. I've been talking kind of slow. You might be thinking, oh my God, Mr. Carr, speed it up. Okay. All we did was take 4 numbers, plug 4 numbers in, type it into Desmos. Because we get such an ugly number, it can be a little scary because you don't know when your numbers are right or wrong, right? 14.1, I don't know if that's good or not, right? A lot of times in math, if you're getting like 3.6, it sounds wrong. But here, you don't know. The only thing that you know for sure is that you better not have a negative distance. The distance between 2 points, when you walk it, that is a positive distance, guaranteed. So, if you ever get a negative distance, that's the only real clue you have that it's wrong. All right, I'm going to do number 2, and I'm going to go much faster. You may have already been working ahead of me. Let's see how fast we can do number 2. I'm going to set it up. I've already got my coordinates, so I don't need to kind of figure that out. You want to put in A as the first or B as the first? We did A the first time. I think it's a good idea to even just write yourself a little hint that the A is going first. Distance equals the square root, make it a nice big one, parentheses squared plus parentheses squared. Minuses in the middle are the number one mistake that people mess up. And now all I need to do is smash 4 numbers in there and I'm going to be done. The first x is negative 4. I'll use a different color here. Negative 4. And then the second x is going to be 3. So that means that the first y is going to be 1. And the second y is going to be negative 1. As long as I can get that into Desmos, I'm going to be done. I'm going to have an answer. So, let's see if I can handle just typing this in. I've already got it typed in pretty well. So what I'm going to do is just backspace the numbers, make sure that I have negative signs, and then get the numbers back in there. The new numbers, negative 4 is the first one, positive 3 is the second one, 1 is the third one, negative 1 is the fourth one. This time I'm seeing 7.28. I said 1 decimal is fine. Are we going 0.2 or 0.3? Rounding up to 0.3, because if you have 5 or higher, you're rounding up. So I've got 7.3 as my distance. All right, I'm going to give you a 2-minute timer. See if you can knock out number 3. Again, these are questions that are not requiring a whole bunch of brain power. It's just all organizing. Write neatly. Organize yourself. Make sure you don't forget those negatives. All right. Anybody found an answer? Want to see if it's right? We got a couple answers over here. Monte, you doing all right, man? Mm-hmm. That looks pretty good. Very good. Anybody else find the answer? We got about 30 seconds left. A couple people figuring it out. Looks good. Looks good. It's a very similar thing. I actually moved it up, so that number's a little bit wrong. Perfect. Perfect. Sorry for this beeping. I know that's probably a little annoying. Forgot I was going to do that. Alright, let's pause this. Our goal when we're working on these assignments, when we're working on these questions, is let's just get the free points. When all we have to do is type something in Desmos, let's type it in correctly. Up on the board for a second, I even had the wrong answer posted up because I put an extra negative there. I was trying to go fast and get the answer super quick for you guys, and even I put an extra negative in there. So it definitely happens. Type slowly, double check what you've typed in. Here's what I got, here's the right answer. 18.68 whatever, rounds it up to 18.7 is the perfect answer. Okay, distance formula. It looks crazy. It actually is coming from the quadratic formula, the Pythagorean theorem. Have you guys ever heard of the Pythagorean theorem? It is to come in geometry. The Pythagorean theorem sounds more complicated, but it's actually much easier to use than the distance formula. Okay, plugging in numbers, you can figure out how far they are apart. That's that. Okay, let me see here. Working on the midpoint formula. Okay, what do you think the midpoint formula helps us with? Trying to find the middle. Okay, if we've got 2 points here, let's say I've got A and B, and I'm trying to find out where the middle of these 2 points are. Let's just call that C. How do you think we can find the midpoint between A and B? And I'll give you a hint. It is so much easier than the distance formula. All we're trying to do is find out what's in the middle. What do you normally do when you're trying to figure out what's in the middle? We're just going to look at these 2 numbers, okay? Let's say that A is over here at 8 and B is over here at -2. And we're just trying to find the number that's right in the middle, the number that's right between 8 and -2. Now this number will almost never be a decimal because they want this coordinate to be a nice coordinate answer, right? If we're trying to find C, then our answer is going to look like parentheses with a comma in the middle. We're not going to have, decimals 99% of the time for this. In order to figure out the middle between 2 numbers, you're just going to try to find the average, and finding the average is something we've been doing for a long time. We're going to have our answer, which is going to be a coordinate, where we add them up and divide by 2. That is a classic average or midpoint finding formula. We're going to have a fraction in the formula, but we're almost never going to get fraction answers because we're going to add 2 things and then cut it in half. On the x side, we're going to do x plus x. And guess what we're going to do for the y coordinate? We're going to do y plus y. And that is going to give us our answer. So a much simpler formula. It is still a formula with 4 gaps because we're going to need an x and an x and a y and a y. We're just going to get all these things in there, type it in Desmos, and get our solution. So for the midpoint of the line segment GH, where G is at 7, -5, and H is at 9, -1. If I was just going to draw a quick little guess where that is, 7, 5 is right down, so maybe that's down here. 9, -1 is also even more right, but less down. So maybe I'll call it like right here. Okay? I'm going to try to find the midpoint of these 2 dots. I expect it to be in the positive x direction, and I expect it to be in the negative y direction. So if I'm going to use this formula, I'm going to make a fraction dividing by 2. And this one's even easier to use because the formula has no negatives. You don't have to really worry about the order that things go in there, because without that negative sign, it doesn't really make all that much of a difference. For this x coordinate, I'm going to choose the x value of 7. You know, whatever, we can do this one first. And then the x value of 9. And for the y's, I'm going to choose the y value of negative 5 and add it with the y value of negative 1. Once I'm this far, it's going to give me my answer. And I don't think Desmos can do all of this at the exact same time. So, for example, we can't type it in the parentheses, I don't think. 7 plus 9 over 2, comma, fraction, negative 5 plus negative 1. I suppose we can, as long as we go look for it on the picture instead of it just telling us the answer right here. We can look around and find it down here. But if you don't want to have to look around for your answers, you can just type them in one at a time. So for example, you just type fraction 7 plus 9 on top of 2. That's my x coordinate. And so the x coordinate, it tells me right away 8. So I can go here and say that my x coordinate is an 8. And then same with my y. If you don't want to have to go looking for it, you can just type in the y portion individually, fraction negative 5 plus negative 1 divided by 2, and it will tell you negative 3. And then you can just go right back to your point here and type negative 3. Again, this is the midpoint between these other 2 points. And midpoints should make a lot of sense if you think about it. What's in between 7 and 9? 8. What's in between negative 5 and negative 1? Negative 3. It's just the middle. It's definitely not rocket science. Some of these questions you could probably even figure out straight up in your head. So I'm going to give you guys another 2-minute timer and let you guys try number 5. I don't imagine it's going to be all that difficult if you actually do want to give it a shot. Try this out. Here it is, Miss Bassett.
Oh, I got it.
I got you. I figured you could, but nice, perfect. Perfect. Okay, we want to take these questions and just get 3 points, right? Don't just fall off the desk, right? You able to get the e-hall pass?
Mr. German came in at the beginning of class.
Yeah.
I've never had any trouble
Okay.
trying to get in.
Well, that's my fault then. My other TAs then just haven't been able to get in yet, so.
Like, you just have to log in like
Yeah.
52 times before it, but other than that, it works fine.
Okay, cool. I'm glad. All right, these 2 minutes are, maybe I didn't even ever hit the start button. Let's check out the answer for number 5. I'm sure we're slowing down a little bit. Checking out number 5. Again, you can probably just anticipate where these are. We've got -7, 4. That's going to be left and up. We've got 3, -4. That's going to be right and down. So if I'm thinking about the middle, it's going to be somewhere with a y value near -1, 0, +1, and the x value is going to be somewhere maybe just barely negative or something like that. We'll see. Midpoint formula, cut them in half, add up the 2 x's, add up the 2 y's. My 2 x's, I'll do a first, -7 and add it with 3, and my y's, a 4 and add it with -4. I already can tell what that one's going to be. On Desmos, you can type it all in together and go look for it. Honestly, that might be a little annoying for me. I'm likely to just type them in one at a time. Fraction first, -7 on top of 3 divided by 2. And then for my y values, fraction first, 4 plus -4 divided by 2. And so my x value and my y value, that's all we need to know. -2, 0. Again, with distance, it's a little tough to check our answer. These are just decimals. It seems kind of random. But with midpoint, it should make sense. You should think, yeah, -2 is between -7 and 3. You should think 0 is between 4 and -4. We're just trying to find the middle. Okay, on the front of this piece of paper, we have had some questions with distance and midpoint. Are we just getting these points for free? When we have the quiz this week or something, are we just getting these right? Anybody having any issues? I know this is a weird formula. Just get those 4 numbers in there. We doing okay? All right, let's flip it over to the back. Again, we're almost done with the notes because I don't plan to do all these questions, and there's only 6 left. So we're getting very near to the end. Okay. Now this first part is where we're actually going to have to use something that's a little bit clever, okay? Straight up using the distance formula, that's algebra 1, just plug it in, get it right. Straight up using the midpoint formula, you know, cut them in half for free. Here's where we have to use a little bit of brains, okay? We're going to try to find a missing endpoint. Basically what that means is we're going to have a line, or I should say a line segment, AB, with a midpoint of C, and we're not going to know where B is. We're going to know that C is a midpoint. You might want to kind of refresh from last week that if we have these little scratches, these little hash marks, that is telling us that these are equal line segments. So C is guaranteed to be a midpoint in this drawing because of these hash marks. We're going to know one of them is an endpoint. We're going to know the other one's a midpoint, and we're not going to know where this lands. Now this is a pretty common type of problem you might have to solve in real life. You know, if you know where something's going to start and you know where it's going to be halfway through the journey, but you don't know where it's going to finish. It's the same idea, okay? Let's figure that out, and let's kind of make a little drawing for number 6. Find the coordinates of A if M is the midpoint of line segment AB and B has the coordinates of that. So a very similar drawing to what we were just talking about. We have line segment AB, and in the middle, we have the midpoint of M. Why do you think they chose M? Because it's the letter for midpoint. So we got our little drawing. We can even put hash marks or little scratch marks here to really be clear that this is a midpoint. Let me get this paused. Once we're clear of that, Now we can actually label these things. We know that M is -1, 2, and we know that B has the coordinates of 3, -5. So we know where B is, and we know M is halfway there, but we don't actually know where A is. Okay? I think, honestly, if you guys were like locked in this classroom and nobody gets to lunch till you figure it out, I think you could find this answer in like 1 minute if it was up to you guys. Okay? If we have to take how many steps to get from B to M, you just do the same thing again, and it's going to get you from M to A, because these are the same distances. This is a, a midpoint right in the middle. Okay? There is kind of a complicated formula. It's not really complicated, but it just kind of seems to come out of nowhere. Okay? Remember our midpoint formula, which was parentheses, add them up and divide by 2. And when you add them up and divide by 2, it's going to tell you what that midpoint number is. So, if we're going to do that formula here, okay, add them up and divide by 2. And let's figure out our x values first. When we add up the x values together, okay, what is the x value for A? We don't know. Like, that's the whole point of the question. We don't know what the x value for A is. The x value for A is a mystery, so we're going to leave it as an x. What is the x value for B? 3. And when we do that, it's supposed to give us the midpoint number. And what is the midpoint x number? -1. So this is it's all the same stuff. This says that the midpoint between mystery and 3 is -1. We still have this x in here. I don't want this to look like some kind of weird exponent, so I'm just going to put a box around it. If we type this in Desmos, it'll tell us what it is. Go to Desmos. Get rid of this. Parentheses, fraction, x plus 3. On the bottom, we're going to cut it in half. That's not what we want yet. That's just the line. We need equals -1. When we do that, it's going to give us this vertical line that's going to tell us where that other point needs to be, which is at -5. So, when it comes to A, our answer, what is the x value of A? -5. Now, as a teacher, I know that when I wrote this stuff down, there's probably like 4 kids in class who are following me and who feel like, yeah, I know where that's coming from. And there's probably 23 kids in class who are thinking, what on earth is any of this here? So, I get it. Let's see the y. And if you're kind of snoozing off, so far today it has been as simple as just plug it into the formula. And for these questions, it is a little bit trickier to use the formula. So let's see. If we're going to do the y coordinate, we should know that add them together, divide by 2 equals the midpoint. So, add them together, divide by 2 should equal the midpoint. What is the midpoint number for the y's? The midpoint number is a 2. And so that's why we're going to put a 2 here. Because when you add them together, and you divide by 2, it's going to tell you the midpoint, and we know the midpoint. So typically our answer, we already know what that is. What's weird about this question is we're trying to work backwards to find our endpoint. Okay? We're trying to find our y values, and so using the y values, We know one of the endpoints, which is -5, but we don't know the y value of a. So when you're missing that endpoint, your variable is always going to be in the midpoint side, which is a little bit weird. Go to Desmos, type it in, it'll give you a line. That is the endpoint. Fraction, y plus -5 divided by 2, and that is equal to 2. Look around. This is a y value, which is why it is a horizontal line. It doesn't make any difference, right? I mean, if I make this an x, it's going to give me the same number, just vertical. But leaving it as a y makes our image a little bit more clear. 9 is where this is. And so what is the other endpoint? -5, 9. Now, just to prove to you guys that this isn't coming out of nowhere, okay, if I type in these coordinates, I know that 3, comma -5, this is point B. That's what they told us in the question. I know that this point, -1, comma 2. Oh, I need a comma 2. I know that this point is point M. That's the midpoint. So our point that we found should make a nice line here with M right in the middle. The point that we found was -5, comma 9. That point should be A. And they should make a nice line with M right in the middle. And if we check out our, yardstick here, they're making a very straight line. That looks good. It looks like from here to here is, 28, and from here all the way to the end is 56. So perfectly right in the middle, okay? Even though, it might be a little tough to visualize it when you're looking at it here, on Desmos, this makes a lot of sense, okay? We knew what B was. We did not know what A was. We just extrapolated, pushed that data a little further. Now, that took a long time. I'm going to go through number 7 a lot faster. And we're just going to push through this and see that even though it's a little funkier than distance or midpoint, it still is not a question that should be taking you, an hour to finish. Okay? Let's start with a picture. Find the coordinates of J. If K is that, K is the midpoint of line segment JL. So we got line segment JL. We got L and J. And we found out that K is the midpoint. So I'm going to put K here with a dot. I'm going to put 2 hash marks on both sides, which clarifies that those are equal line segments, which means that K is right in the middle. I know that L has the coordinates of -8, comma 6, and that K has the coordinates of -5, comma 10. Where is J? It's not actually a crazy process. It just seems like it comes from nowhere the first time you see it. The midpoint, add them up and divide by 2 is -5. Before I move on, where did this -5 come from? It's the K number, right? It's the midpoint. And when I'm trying to add them up and divide by 2, I don't know what both those numbers are. I know the L number, but I do not know the J number. So X is my J stand-in. It's like my question mark. And the L number, what should go next to the X plus, what number is going here? Nice job, -8. All right. This is my K number because it's my midpoint. This is my L number because it's the one I know. And this is my J number, which is a letter because I don't know what J is. I go to Desmos, I type it in, and I'm done. Parentheses, fraction, parentheses. I'm going to do X plus -8 divided by 2, and that should be equal to -5. Desmos, done. That fast. What is the X value of J? -2. The x value of j, point j is negative 2. Again, it seems like a really weird formula. If all you're doing is copying it down and you don't have kind of brain on, it seems like it's totally random. The midpoint, where you add them together and divide by 2, is equal to what number? 10. Perfect. Nice job. You rock. That was easy peasy. When it comes to the actual y values of the ends, I don't know both of them. The j, I don't know what the j is. What number should go for the L? 6. Yep. Then we type it in, and then we're done with the question. We're going to have y plus 6 divided by 2, and that's going to be equal to 10. Oh, had to scroll out a little bit, had to zoom around a little bit, but I found it. 14. And again, just for the sake of being super thorough, you do not have to do this, but just to prove it to you, we know that we have the coordinate -5, 10, and we have the coordinate -8, 6, and that this point right here, the first one, is our midpoint K. Oh wait, label it K. And that this point down here is our endpoint L. And so we're looking for a point that's going to be over in this area, and it's going to be called J. We figured out that J was probably -2, 14. And does it look like K is right in between these two? Yeah, looks pretty good. Does it look right in the middle? Does it look like a straight line? Perfect. Okay? All right. Number 8. Number 8 says R, find the coordinates of R if Q is the midpoint and P has the coordinate. Notice that these are like, it's the same question again and again. There's not a lot of variety here. You just have to do this. Question 8. People who are snoozing, it's going to be a miss, right? They're not going to get this one. Try this out. If you aren't feeling confident, draw the same picture that I've drawn. Write the same formula that I've write. Just make your papers start to look like mine, and all of a sudden, you're going to realize the answer's right there for you. Yeah, again, it's like, it's not all that hard, but like just getting it set up in your head like takes a second to organize. Perfect. Excellent job. Doing all right? Kind of know where to start. A good place to start is just draw that picture, or do this kind of get this stuff set down. Is it okay? Perfect. You got it. Such a court, they're making me a little nervous now, right? There he goes. I know it can be. That was a lot of talking today. Yeah, looks perfect. Nice job. Nice job. Okay. Nice picture. I like that. Drawing a picture, always a good start. That first x value is perfect. So now we want the y value. Just the same setup. We're just going to swap out everything that's an x, everything that's a y. Easy peasy. So you got the two formulas in there. Then you're just looking for, hold up, this first one. We have to type in. You have the -1 in the parentheses, you see what I'm saying? And the 5 outside. So your coordinates. And right now, what you have these two coordinates. That's it. So your coordinates. So that's the endpoint of this. The other coordinates, which are including and 5, 6. These points here, even though they're going that away from you, kind of, it's still a nice straight line without our collection times. And then I bump that. So yeah, you got it 100%. I like that you're checking your answer. Maybe try not to go. You doing okay? You getting a little sleepy? Really hard. How you feeling? You want to kind of walk through it together?
I'm checking the water value.
Okay, man? Okay. So what we're thinking about is that the midpoint formula, add them up, divide by 6. That's like these questions, we actually get to find out what the midpoint is, or we get to find out what the bar. That's why we set these up as letters instead of calculating letters. So, write this formula, and you're going to want to take X, put 2 there, equals 9. So this would be the 2 ends, the middle, whichever one is the midpoint, Q is the midpoint. Perfect, we put that number out there, we put the other number in there. So, we're going to work with all the x's first, and then we're going to go back to all the ones. So if you do this x first, you go back first, you type that in, you're done. All right, lunch is coming up. We're almost there, and when we come back from lunch, like I said before, we'll talk about how the week's going to go. We'll talk about the classwork for today. We made it. This was, at the same time, 8 questions. Like, and some of them we did together, so apologies. I know this was a long one. There was a lot of me talking. Here we go. Number 8, I'm going to draw a nice picture. It says that find the coordinates of R if Q is the midpoint. I keep doing that. It needs to be a dot with 2 hash marks. And P, if your P and R are in different spots, it's okay as long as Q is in the middle. Q is at -1, 3. P is at 5, 6. And so our X value we can find by add them up, divide by 2 equals the middle. The middle X value is -1. And when we add them up, I don't know what R is, but I do know what P is. For the Y, same thing. Add them up, divide by 2 equals the middle. My Y values, the middle is 3, the ends, I don't know, and 6. I type these into Desmos, and I will get my 2 answers. Typing them in. My X value should be, did you find X plus 5 is equal to -1? Did you find the answer -7 for your X value? Proud of you, nice job, very impressive. You did a great job paying attention. Y plus 6 divided by 2 equals 3. Did you find 0 as the Y value? So that means, to finish off the notes for today, -7, 0 is the coordinates for point R. All right. As we go to lunch, that was distance, midpoint, and finding a missing endpoint. Nice job.